Good morning, guys. Welcome to today's episode of our introduction to Python programming basics. So today we'll be starting from flow control. But before we get down to flow control, I'm supposed to may mention some things about the application of Python yesterday, but I was unable to do that. So today we'll be talking about, first of all, we'll be talking about the application of Pythons, where we can apply Python programming language to. So we have varieties. We have so many applications of Python. We can apply it to web. We have the web application, which we have the frameworks like Django and Flask. Likewise, we can apply it to AI fields. So make use of Python is one of the most used programming language in AI field. So you can use it. You can apply it to machine learning, data science, deep learning, computer vision, object detection, natural language process, which is NLP, and so many other things. So we have so many applications where we can apply Python programming languages to compare to other programming languages. So that's that about the application of Python programming language. But before we go down to our flow control, let's try and add some things, some new things to our first program. Yesterday we were able to run our first program, which was able to print the hello world for us, and also ask for our name, and we are able to input our name into the system, and it runs it and shows and welcomes us like, okay, it's nice meeting you, Abib, or your own name. So now today we'll add some little things to it, like let's say we want our program to calculate, to get the length of our strings. Let's take for instance now the it's nice meeting you, Abib. We want to know the number of characters in that particular clause, or let's say sentence. So Python has an inbuilt functions for that. And okay, let's ask for our age too now. So let's ask for our age, okay, to be able to input our age as well. So let's get down to that and let's get that done. So let's go to our Python notebook, Python editor. So Python editor. Okay. So let's get started. So the first thing we did yesterday was that, okay, so we'll be doing something today. We'll be adding comments to our code. So the first thing is that, okay, let's just add comments first. Okay, this program says hello world and asks for my name. So now let's start by writing our codes. So print, okay, hello world. So the next thing says okay, print. We did this yesterday. We were able to do this yesterday. So just writing it is your name So this one asks for the name. That's the comment. So I'll be explaining how comments works. So the next thing is that we have to write a code to prompt us to enter our name, which we have to use the input statement. So after that, then we print it is nice meeting you. It is nice meeting you plus, okay, concatenate it. Don't forget the plus sign is for concatenation here, since we are working with strings. So now what we want to do now is that we want to know the length of our strings. We want to know the numbers of characters in it. So now let's do that by printing, using our print statement. Print, don't forget, print is a function. Is a built-in function in Python. So then we'll make use of another built-in function which is called len. Then we'll enter my name. We want to know the string, the length of our string, my name, length of the name. So after that, we are good to go. So after that, so what next to do is to print, to ask for our age. We want to take in our age as well. So what we are going to do here now is that after taking our age, we want to know what our age will be next year. Do you get me? I want to know what our age will be next year. So we'll be concatenating we'll be adding an additional figure to to our age. So we add to our age just a year to our age. So let's do that by printing what is your age. Let's add a comment, and this asks for the age. So my age will now be equals to input so now print you will be, so we add string my age plus 1. In a year. So stop. I will close our string and I'll close it. So I think we are done with our code. So now the first thing is that we are going to print hello world. After printing hello world, print what is your name to ask for your name. Then you input your name. After inputting your name, it prints another statement which says it is nice meeting you, Abib, or your name. So after then it prints the name, the length of the name. After printing the length of the name, then it prints again what is your age. After doing that, you input your age. So after inputting the age, then you print you will be this age in a year, which is the next year. So let's run this and see how it works. So So let's go to run and run this module. Okay, we have to save it, and let's go to our ID and see what we've got here. So we have an error statement here. So let's look back to our code and see where the error is. So you can see we have the hello world, what is your name? So the next thing was to ask for our name, to be able to input our name, but we had an error statement which says name input is not defined. So we made a mistake on the input side, so we need to adjust it. It's not, there's not supposed to be E at the back there, so you have to delete that E. So let's do that. So let's come down here and delete it. So, and let's run again and see. So as you can see now, we have our input here. So my name is Habib. So present, and it says it is nice meeting you, Habib. So the length of our string is what is 5. So what is your name? We still have another error there. So the error says that line 9 so we have the same error input, so we need to adjust that. So let's correct that on our code. So correct this and we run it again. Run module. Okay, so let's do this. So Habib, enter what is your name, what is your age. So let's say my age is 12. Press enter. So you see now it says you will be 13 in a year. That simply means I will be 13 years old next year. So now let's try and explain some things there to ourselves. So on the code, you can see on the code from the start, okay, we've explained what print does to us before, what input does, but we've not been able to explain what len does. Len is also an inbuilt function, likewise string and int as well. So when you make use of length, it's going to count the numbers of characters in your strings and print it out. So you can see now on our output here, my name is Abi, which is a 5 letters word. So the length function counted it and it says that it's 5 and it print out 5 here. You can see we have 5 here, which is correct. So now let's now go down to the next one. The next function that we have here that is somehow strange to us will be the str function and the int function. So what the str function does is that it's used to convert, be it integer or float, to string. So our our Python translator will understand that string. Will take that string as a string the moment we applied the str function on it. Likewise, what the int does is that it converts an integer that is in string format back to an integer. Basically, what happened here is that the moment we enter the age here, input automatically converts any input integer into its to string format. So you need to, you can only concatenate string to string, and we want to know the age that this particular person will be next year. So we need to concatenate, we need to add an integer to another integer. But here now our age is in string format, so we need to find a way to convert it to an integer. So the only way that we can make use of to convert the number in string format back to integer format is to make use of the function int. So that's what we did there. We changed the age back to integer and we added 1 to it. So after adding 1 to it, we convert it back to string so that we can add the age to the strings that we've written before, which is you will be plus the age of that person, which is 13, which we needed to convert back to string so that we can be able to concatenate it to the existing strings. So with that now, we'll now be able to print out the whole string the whole string. We'll be able to print out the whole string all together. You can see now we now have you will be 13 in a year. So this particular 13 here is no more an integer. Is now in string format. That's the reason why it was able to be concatenated to the strings. So that's that about down. So now let's move on. Let's move to flow control. Flow control. So flow control. Like we explained yesterday, flow control. So the basics of individual instructions, and that a program is just a series of instructions. But the real strength of programming isn't just running or executing one instruction after one another, like we did on the example that we just finished now. We run after one program, we run the next one, and followed by the next one till we finish running the whole program. So, but based on how the expressions evaluate, the program can be decided to skip instructions, repeat them, or choose one of several instructions to run. So we can actually pick a particular instruction to be run by our translator, or we can skip a particular instruction. Let's say for instance now we can skip a particular print based on our instruction to print something else. Let's say we run the first line of code, the second one, and we decided to skip the third one and move to let's say the fourth or the fifth instruction. So those are the works of flow control. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that based on how the expressions evaluate, the program can decide to skip instructions. So based on what we've written in our program, it can decide to skip instructions, repeat them, or choose one of several instructions to run. In fact, you must never want your programs to start from the first line of code, if you like, and simply execute every line straight to the end. So flow control statements can decide which Python instructions to execute under which conditions. This flow control statement directly corresponds to the symbols in a flow chart. So let's show ourselves an example of the flow chart, how it looks like. So as you can see here on this flow chart, this flow chart depicts what to do if it's raining. So starting from the beginning, okay, yeah. So I'm this person at the start point. So and it's raining here. So what this does is that it's asking me, is it raining? If it is raining, if I said yes, then I need to find an umbrella to use so that I will be able to go outside. But if it is not raining, then I can go outside. I can just go out and end the program. But if it is raining, I need to get an umbrella. Then after getting an umbrella, then I can go outside. But if I don't have an umbrella, then the next thing for me is to wait for some time, just to wait for a while till the rain stops. So if the rain stops, I can go out to wherever I'm going to. But if it doesn't stop, then I need to wait again until the rain stops. So you can see how simple it is. So we have different programs here now. You can see the first condition here is that we have a lot of conditions. So the first condition here is that, is it raining? That's the first condition. So if it is raining, so our code, our Python code will just run the next one and end the program. But if it is raining, then we have another condition again, that do I have an umbrella? If I have an umbrella, then the next thing is that I will go outside. So it won't bother running the next code again, the wait a while code and is raining code anymore. So it will just go outside and end the program. But if I don't have an umbrella, then to run the next code, which says I should wait a while. So after waiting for some time, to check if it is still raining again. If it's still raining, then it will wait, and if it's no more raining, then I go outside. So that's basically what flow control is about. So now, after that, can I talk about the Boolean values, because these are the things that we needed to build up our flow control system. So Boolean values. While the integer, floating point, and string data types have an unlimited number of possible values, we have just two data types as only two values for our Boolean values. They are the two values that we have for Boolean value, and the two values are true and false. So after that, we have our comparison operators. So we have like 6 of them. So we have the equal to, we have not equal to, we have less than, we have greater than, we have less than or equal to, we have greater than or equal to. So we have the Boolean operators as well. We have the and, or, and not. Those are the 3 Boolean operators that we have. So, and we need to understand the difference between the double equals to and the equals to operators. So one is an assignment operator, the other one is the comparison operator. The double equals to operator asks whether two values are the same as each other, while the equal to operator, which is the assignment operator, puts the value on the right into the value on the left. So an example of that is that if you want to assign a variable now, so we have to, the variable name will have to be equated, to be assigned, the values will have to be assigned to the variable name. So that's the work of an assignment statement. But for the equal to operator, it's just to check if this value on the right is equals to the value on the left. So that's just it. So let's talk about the binary Boolean operator. So we have the binary Boolean operator. The AND or operators always take two Boolean values or expression. So they are considered binary operators. The AND operator evaluates an expression to true if both Boolean values are true. Otherwise, it evaluates to false. On the other hand, the OR operator evaluates an expression to true if either or the two Boolean values is true. If both are false, it evaluates to false. So you can see on our table the truth table for the AND operators. So we have it is only true when the two values are true. So you can see true and true gives us true and the rest give us false. So on the OR operators, it is only false when the two are false and the rest are true when either of the two are true. So the next is the NOT operator. Unlike AND or OR, the NOT operator operates on only one Boolean value expression. The NOT operator simply evaluates to the opposite Boolean value. So as you can see on our table, we have the expression not true evaluates to false and not false evaluates to true. So let's talk about the elements of flow control. The element of flow control so let's talk about mixing Boolean and comparison operators. So let's show ourselves an example of mixing the Boolean. Before we go down to that one, let's talk about the mixing Boolean of Boolean and comparison operators and see how it works. So we'll show ourselves an example of that so that we'll be able to understand how they work in and together. So let's open our Python IDE and punch some codes. So in our IDE here, let's make use of an example. Say let's say we have this 4 less than 5 into brackets and 5 less than 6 so that before we run this, you can see 4 is actually less than 5 and 5 is actually less than 6. So our Boolean expression should sum up to true. So if we press enter now, you can see that we have a true Boolean statement. So let's try another example. 4 less than 5 and 9 less than 6. 4 less than 5 and 9 less than 6. And this should give us a false statement. And so we have a false statement. So let's say we now make use of another example. Let's use the OR statements this time around. Let's say 1 equals to 2. Don't forget what the double equals to does. Or 2 equals to 2. So you can see that one of the statements, one of the Boolean statements is actually right. The 2 is actually equals to 2, but 1 is not equals to 2. So in this case, one is false and the other is true. So and we are making use of OR as our Boolean operator here. So, and don't forget that for OR operator, the truth table for our OR operator, it is only false when the two statements are false. But in this condition, one is false, the other is true. So we should get a true statement. So you can see we have a true statement. So that's that about it. So now let's talk about elements of flow control. So flow control statement often starts with a part called the conditions, and all are followed by a block of code called the clause. Before you learn about Python specific flow control statements, let's cover the conditions and the block the blocks the block of code. So let's talk about condition first. Yeah, so conditions. The Boolean expression you've seen so far could all be considered conditions, which are the same thing as expressions. Condition is just a more specific name in the context of flow control statements. Conditions always evaluate down to a Boolean value, true or false. A flow control statement decides what to do based on whether its condition is true or false. And almost every flow control statement uses a condition. So what we're trying to say here is that we have to have a condition for our flow control. So our program runs based on the conditions given to our program. So we need to understand that. So for the blocks of code, line of Python code can be grouped together in blocks. You can tell when a block begins and ends from the indentation of the lines of code. There are 3 rules of blocks. Blocks begin when the indentation increases. Blocks can contain other blocks. Blocks end when the indentation decreases to 0 or to a containing blocks indentation. We've got to understand this when we lay our hands on examples. So, but all we need to understand is that 2 things are very important under flow control: the condition and the blocks of codes. So here are the flow control statements that we have. Now let's explore the most important piece of flow control, the statements themselves. So we have if statements, we have else statements, we have elif statements, we have while loop statements, we have break statements, continue statements, for loop, and range function. So we'll take it one after the other and explain each statement to us and do some examples on each statement. So let's start with the if statement. The most common type of flow control statement is the if statement. An if statement clause, that is the block following the if statement, will execute if the statement condition is true. So if the condition is not true, it won't execute, or it stops, it goes to end. The clause is kept if the condition is false. In plain English, an if statement could be read as: if this condition is true, execute the code in the clause. In Python, an if statement consists of the following: the if keyword, a condition, that is an expression that evaluates to true or false, a colon starting on the next line, an indented block of code called the if clause. So let's show ourselves an example of what we've been talking about. So before we move on, I would like to introduce us to a particular editor, which is PyCharm. I will recommend us to download the PyCharm and make use of the PyCharm. Python is much more easier to use compared to the Python IDLE. So I'll be making use of the PyCharm instead of the Python IDLE now. So at your own leisure time, you can download the PyCharm and install it and get to practice the codes on it. You'll find it more easier to use compared to the Python IDLE. So let's make use of the PyCharm. I'm using PyCharm. So this is our PyCharm. I hope you can see it very well. Okay, let me try and increase the font. I hope you can see it better now. Yeah, I think you can see it's better now. So let's show ourselves an example of a if statement. So we have this small example here. So if name equals to Alice, print I Alice. So if you run this code now, so if name equals to Alice, then you should print I for us. So you can actually modify this. Let's have an input. Print what is your name? And name equals to impute. So now if I run this, so if I enter Alice now, if I enter Alice, it will print I Alice. But if my input is different from Alice, it will throw an error. So let's try that. Alice, you can see it said I Alice. So let's run it again and try to enter something else. Let's say I change that Alice from small letter from capital letter, that A from capital letter to small letter, and see what will happen. So let's run it. You see that it doesn't print anything for us. It just process the code and finish, no output. So that shows that our output, our input is different from what the condition is expecting. So our condition was that our name must be equals to Alice. Since our name is not equals to Alice, so it doesn't print anything for us. So let's enter something very wrong to Alice, maybe my name, sha. Okay, let's run Abi and enter. You see the same thing applies. Doesn't print the I. The reason why is that our if statement, the condition given to the if statement was that our name must be equals to Alice. So because the name is not equals to Alice, so it's not printing anything for us. It's not printing the next code for us, which is to print I Alice. So that's that about that one. So now let's talk about the next one, which is the else statement. So the else statement, an if clause can optionally be followed by an else statement. So see if statement, else, elif, they work together. Elif and else follows the if statement. So now let's talk about the else statement. So in plain English, an else statement could be read as if this condition is true, execute this code, or else execute this one. So like we did earlier, the code that we wrote earlier, the moment we inputted a wrong condition that it doesn't print anything for us, we are making use of else statements to actually print something for us, and what it will print for us will let us understand that what we entered is actually wrong from the condition that has been stated before. So an else statement doesn't have a condition, and in code an else statement always consists of the following: the else keyword, a colon, starting on the next line, an indented block of code called the else clause. So let's see how that works. Let's go back to our code and show us an example. Let's add an else statement to our code. So on our code, what is our Python? I'll open the Python. So here now we add else and says print this is not Alice. So now if we run our code now and we enter the right name Alice to print I Alice, if we enter the wrong name, it will print this is not Alice. So let's try that. Let's run it again. So let's say Abib and press enter. You see we have this is not Alice. You can see now. So the else statement makes us understand that there is something wrong with our input. So it's like an optional statement for our if statement. So if the if condition is not if the if condition is not met, so the else statement prints instead of the if statement. So that's that about else. So let's talk about the elif statement. The elif statement, while only one of the if or else clause will execute, you may have a case where you want one of many possible clauses to execute. The elif statement is an else if statement that always follows an if or another elif statement. It provides another condition that is checked only if any of the previous conditions were false. In case an elif statement always consists of the following: So in our code, an elif statement always consists of the following: the elif keyword, a condition, that is an expression that evaluates to true or false, a colon, starting on the next line, an indented block of code called the elif clause. So now let's show ourselves how elif works. By using that same example, we add elif statements to that our example. So let's do that. So let's go to our Python and add elif. So one thing you need to understand is that at the end of our if statements, if elif else statements, else will always come last. To always come last. So now let's add our elif. So elif can be added after the if statement. The if statement and the else statement can only be called once, but the elif can be called multiple times. So let's say now I want to add elif to our statement that, okay, if this condition is false, the first if condition, if it is false, then we want to print another condition. So if name is equals to Alice is not met, then you can say elif name is equals to Abib, print I Abib. Can still add another elif again. Elif name equals to, let's use another name, dummy strings is cap lock, put our column and an indented, so we say I dummy. So let's save that. So if any of these conditions are false, then to print else. So let's try this and see what we get. So run. Let's say we try using Abib. You can see I Abib. Let's try dummy. We have I dummy. See it. We have I dummy. But if you enter something else that is different entirely, let's say we enter Kunle and we run it, you can see this is not Alice. Okay, let's try and adjust something there. This is not applicable, this is not accepted. Okay, this name, this is not accepted. So let's run it and say only, you can see this name is not accepted. So it's none of the name we are expecting. So the last statement that will be printed if none of the conditions, the if and elif conditions, is true. So to print the else statement. So that's that about if, elif and else statements. So the next thing that we'll be talking about now is the while loop. The while loop. So let's talk about the while loop. So about while loop, you can make a block of code execute over and over again with a while statement. The code in a while clause will be executed as long as the while statement condition is true. In code, a while statement always consists of the following: the while keyword, a condition, that is an expression that evaluates to true or false, a colon starting on the next line, an indented block of code called the while clause. So you can see that a while statement looks similar to an if statement. The difference is in how they behave. At the end of an if clause, the program execution continues after the if statement, but at the end of a while clause, the program execution jumps back to the start of the while statement. The while clause is often called the while loop or just the loop. Okay, let's look at an if statement and a while loop that use the same condition and take the same action based on the condition. So let's make use of this example. So let's go to our code. So let's go to our PyCharm and run some new code. Let's open a new file. So to open a new file on PyCharm, go here, right click and pick Python file, and you name it, you give it a name. Let's name it loop or while loop. Let's name it while loop. So press enter and we have a new sheet. So let's say spam is equals to 0. So we assign a variable 0 to spam. Yeah. So now we want to make an if statement. Says if spam is less than 5, if spam is less than 5, then we should print hello world. Then we'll say spam equals to spam plus 1, spam plus 1. So let's run this and see what we've got. So if we run this now, we have just a single hello word. So you can see the moment for if statement, the moment our condition is true, it prints our statement just once for us. But now let's see how while loop works. If we change this if statement to while, let's run our code and see what we've got here. So we can see now we have hello world printed 5 times. The reason why is that what while loop does is that the moment our condition is true, it prints the statement for us and look back up to the condition again. If the condition is still true, to still print it again until the condition is met and the condition is complete. So you can see now that what we gave as condition was that while statement is less than 5. We should continue printing our hello world. So the moment our condition has been met, which is 5 times, the moment that's printed the hello word 5 times, it stops. It's just like looking back and checking if the condition is met. So now all this last line of code does is that our spam has been initiated to 0. So the moment it prints the first hello word, it will increment the spam. The spam will now be equals to 1. So it will look up again and go and check the spam. Once it checks the spam and sees that the spam is 1, and you can see that 1 is still less than 5, it still prints our statement again, because our condition is still true. It will print hello word again. It comes down here and the spam will increment to 2 to add 1 to it. It turns to 2. So our spam will now be equals to 2. Our program will still check the spam again and sees that the program is 2 and compare it to the condition given to the while loop. Sees that the condition is still true, prints another hello word again, increment the spam to 3, go back and check it again, compare it to the condition, print another hello word until it sees that the spam is now equals to 5 and 5 is not less than 5 anymore. So it stops printing hello word at that point. So at that point our condition has been satisfied and it stops printing hello word. So now let's just try and increase this. So let's say we change our condition to be less than 10. We should be expecting our program to print out 11 hello words for us. So now if we run it, you can see we have 10 hello words printed. Hello words. Let's increase it. You can see we have 1, 2, up to 10. We have 10 hello word printed. So that's the advantage of while loop over the if statement. So you can see clearly now the difference between the hello word and the if statement and the while loop statement. So we'll be stopping here for today on our class. So continue from where we stop today tomorrow by God's grace. So have a nice day. Thank you very much.